Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cops on Camera. This session isn't so much about making television as being in it and being the subject of it. And I'm really pleased we've got two stars of documentaries with us and the people who made their programmes. I'll introduce you to the panel. You'll probably recognise, well, at least two of them. Detective Constable Martin Hart from Bedfordshire Police was the subject of 24 Hours in Police Custody on Channel 4. Elisa Pomeroy, sitting next to Martin, was the series director and the director of Martin's episode. Over here we have Detective Sergeant Carol Barlow from Greater Manchester Police, who was followed for 18 months for the BBC's Detectives documentary series, and Colin Barr is the creative director of Minnow Films, who made it. So we're concentrating on these two very different programmes, 24 hours of documentary making for Martin and 18 months for Carol. Very different experiences and very different programmes, but fascinating in their own way. Let's begin with a clip of 24 hours to remind those. You've probably all seen it, but let's jog your memory. Now, Martin's episode featured the arrest of Mahbub Baig. You had 24 hours to charge him, and we join you here as you are turning up the pressure.
You are in a conspiracy. It doesn't matter that Pele come up to do the shooting. You don't have to be the shooter to be involved in a conspiracy. So what was your role?
No comment.
You need to talk to us. Mr. Malik is giving you advice, but should you get charged with this, he will not be the one standing in the dock. It will be you. The whole responsibility of whether you answer the questions is down to you, not Mr. Malik. Because advice is purely advice. Okay? The 19th. Day before. Your brother-in-law come round day before?
No comment.
Because this is the thing that's going to really do it for you. On the 19th of May, at 11 minutes past 10 at night, your 585 number gives Sajid a ring. And your phone is at your house. Your legitimate phone is sitting in your house. Cell-sighted to your house. 2 seconds later, the 818 number makes a phone call to Bernard Pele with cell sites coming from your house. Bernard Pele, the bloke that we think pulled the trigger. Start explaining.
That's an incredibly pressured professional moment to be on camera, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that was coming towards the end of the third interview. So we'd been interviewing him on off for nearly 3 hours by that time. And we knew that we wanted to apply pressure. We wanted him to talk. We wanted an account. So we were trying everything we could, and we were just pouring on more and more pressure and pointing out that, well, if you do get charged with it, you're of sound mind, you're over 18, you know what's going on. It's your responsibility, this is your interview. So if you're not going to tell us anything, don't try and rely on it in court.
It's important to say at this stage that Mahbub Baig was eventually found not guilty.
Yes, he was.
After it went to court. But let's go back to the beginning of this whole process. So what's the first you hear that you're about to be a TV star?
Well, there was rumours flying around the police station that a TV company were coming in, and I went away. If you watched it, you might have guessed where I went. I went to Vegas. So I had no idea that they were in or what was going on, and that was my first day back. We'd landed the evening before. I'd just about recovered from having no sleep, and I wandered in, and it was literally, cameras. I didn't even know the arrest was going to happen. I'd been working on the operation for 6 months, which that arrest was focusing. That was op arm. But I didn't know he was going to be arrested. Chris Hutton, my DS, before we went away, hadn't even indicated that they were going to bring him in. So the first thing I knew was when I walked through the door on the 4th of April, and I was told, "You're interviewing." Okay.
Right, so, well that's in terms of you doing the case, but in terms of you being on television and being filmed, who was talking to you? Who mentioned it to you? Who asked your permission? And what did you think?
Well, the very first day that was being filmed, they come in, they said, "Would you mind putting a mic on?" I was like, "No, it's fine, carry on." And then afterwards, as it was going through, they were saying, "Well, you're going to release?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" "Oh, you're going to allow yourself to go out?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I've got to talk to my family."
But when you were putting the microphone on, did you realise what you were letting yourself in for that day?
Of what subsequently happened? No. I thought I was just doing my job. But it has changed certain things.
So did you have time to think about it, or were you just concentrating on your job?
No, my job. There wasn't a lot of time to think about it. So I walked through the door. Didn't really think I'd be on the programme because I said I was working on the operation that had been going for a long time, and I didn't think there was any more arrests. So I was in a different office, hiding out of the way, never expected to see a camera. That changed, and no, that day was about my job. The cameras can't get in the way of my job.
And so when it comes to giving your permission, I mean, you say you made them sweat for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Well, what were you pondering? Or were you just making them sweat?
No, it's not making them sweat. It's about my family. It's not just me. I'm big enough and ugly enough to look after myself, but you go out into the street, people see you, they know you. I mean, if we're honest, not everybody loves the police. You know, some people think we're great, some people think we're bad, some people really despise us. So it's not an impact on me. If I'm out with my wife or my two boys, it's down to them, because yeah, you can have a go at me, fine. You know, I'll take responsibility for being me. But a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old aren't responsible. So I asked their permission. Do you want it to go out? Because people might see you with me, and you know, it might not even go out. But then the two boys and my wife said, yeah, go on, go for it, carry on.
But you're a bit of a performer, aren't you? I mean, you were a holiday rep.
Yeah.
Before you were a
policeman.
policeman.
I was 4 years. 4 years. 20s, Magaluf, Zakynthos, skiing. Yeah.
So, I mean, did you liked the idea of being on telly? Or?
At first, I was a bit nervous, because you always think that. Well, I noticed that people, after it went out, people pick up things that you never ever think of, and then Creamfields lanyard. You know. Why is an old man wearing a Creamfields lanyard? Well, I was actually there in the 90s when it started, so I feel entitled. But no, I didn't really expect it. Yeah.
And so during the shoot, I mean, this is 24 hours, so it's not a lot of time to adjust. No. It's not a lot of time to think about it.
No.
Did you just not think? I mean, how do you just click into ignoring the cameras?
Because the job was really, really important. Luckily, at the start, the CID office didn't have a fixed rig in it. We hadn't allowed it because we've got paperwork all over the place. We have to have a mass tidy up before they come in and film, because you've got papers everywhere. But there wasn't cameras inside our office. They were all through downstairs and in custody and in the interview suites, but custody CCTV'd anyway, so that wasn't a big thing. The biggest thing was on that day, and they did put a fixed rig in later in our office, but there was a couple of people running around with cameras saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry about me. I'm not here." Well, actually, you're just above my computer monitor. Can you? You are here, but the job is more important. So in the end, your head goes into the job. You have to do it, and you've got to try and do your job properly. So,
Elisa, what do you do anything to try and reassure them, put them at ease?
I think you build up a sort of trust over a period of time. Martin was away just prior to filming, but somebody probably would have spoken to you. You knew about us, and most people we had long conversations with over the course of a month. A lot of people said no at first and then came around. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Martin, but we did wire your office for the cameras.
Yeah, great.
Beforehand, because we hoped that you'd come round and that you would see your colleagues doing it, and you'd see that actually you can go about your daily job and it doesn't affect your work. So we did put wires there, but we didn't put cameras until we got your go-ahead, which we hoped we would get.
That wasn't mine, but
The wires were there.
Yeah.
I mean, let's introduce Carol and the detectives at this stage as well. And again, let's show a clip. Now, Carol, I mean, the case that we follow with you is very contrasting. This is after the arrest of Ray Terrett, friend of Jimmy Savile, accused of a series of horrific, historic offences. And the clip that we've got here actually is right at the beginning, before the first interrogation, where you are preparing, because you're a Tier 5 interviewer. You're preparing your colleague Rod here for the first encounter. Let's have a look.
Are you happy you can do that interview now without having to pick up paper?
Yeah.
Right, OK. I just want you to give him that overall impression that you know what you're talking about and that it's all in your head. You're able to look at him, eyeball him, because this is what he needs now. He needs to get put under some pressure. So when you ask him those questions, I want you to look at him, right, as opposed to looking at your interview plan. At the end, we get to a challenge phase. So I absolutely want, in the challenge phase, pause before, because he's now thinking, what's he going to ask me? All right, deliver it with meaning. Definitely a lot of that eye contact that you were just doing then. And then when you've finished your question, look at him. He's going to say no comment, and I want you to look at him and count to 10 in your head. Okay. Because he might want to fill that silence, which he's somebody who wants to talk. Yeah, he might have that need to just say something. Okay. All right, and then move on to your next one, and we'll deliver it like that. Okay. And knowing that you're building up and building up and building up till we get to the big ones where we have got independent evidence that he is having sex with young children. Yeah? And again, really specifically, when you finish your last one, a long, long look at him. Put that close to you so you can use it. I don't want you to get flustered. Don't have it in your hand because you're fidgeting. So it says ready for interview.
Right, okay. So how did you get drawn into this? And did you have any idea what you were signing up for?
I had absolutely no idea whatsoever. We came into this investigation once it had started to gain momentum in terms of victims. So it was originally dealt with by the rape unit, and then when it got to 5 victims and was still building up and we realised there was more to come, it came into the major incident team because we have the resources, the computer systems to deal with the complex investigation that it became. Now, the TV crews had been signed up by the rape unit, so when it came over to the major incident team, we inherited the cameras that came with it. So I know there was a lot of negotiation with the rape unit and the staff in there, but when it came into us at the major incident unit, we didn't quite have that informal getting to know you period. It was like, you've got the investigation, now get on with it. So there was a bit of a scurry, I think, about who will and who won't. For me personally, I'd been involved in a programme called The Eyewitness some years before when I was in the training school, and I really enjoyed that experience. It was quite an educational programme, not seen by a lot of people. Had no effect on my private life, had very little effect on work. Some people saw it, a lot of people didn't affect me at all. So I didn't really have a fear of cameras. I kind of thought, do you know what, I'm about to retire. This could be a really exciting thing to do. So I did think in terms of being on a TV programme, how fab. So, you know, and then I thought, well, I'm going to retire, so what does it matter if people know what I do? So I was quite relaxed and chilled out about it. Not quite the same for a lot of people in the unit who had all independent reasons not to do it. So there was a small nucleus of us who said, yeah, that's fine. But of course, at that time, when we signed up and said, yes, we're happy to do it, what we didn't envisage was how big that investigation would grow. And with every new victim we got new leads, and it became a very protracted inquiry. And so from my unit getting it, we were 18 months before we went to trial with it. And in that time, the cameras were coming in and out. And then when we went to trial, we had the cameras with us every day. Very, very draining, I have to say. But, you know, it's like childbirth, really. It was
draining
painful.
why? Draining because you're just aware of them, or...?
Yeah, you are aware of them, and no matter how much you might say, actually, I forgot they were there, you don't ever forget they're there. You know, I do have a bit of a potty mouth when I get put under stress. But I didn't. I never. No, you didn't catch me swearing on that programme at all. So, you know, for all that 18 months that James and Emma...
18 months without swearing?
Well, it didn't go in the, it didn't go in the film. It didn't go in the final edit. There might have been the odd one or two slips, but, you know, I did very well. And my husband was really proud of me. So, yeah, I managed it. So I was aware. I was always aware. And the thing was that they were following my part of it because I'd signed up to it, but I was working in an office with people who hadn't signed up to it. And that was a difficult thing to manage, is their resistance to it and my cooperation with it.
Colin, what's the deal? What are the rules of engagement?
With the police?
Yeah, I mean, do you film everything? Or are they telling you, don't film this now?
Oh, there are some things that everybody accepts that you can't film, and there are times when Carol would say, actually, I don't want this filmed, and you know, we would have to accept that. We can't sort of force ourselves on anybody. You just have to accept that that's the deal, really. But you have to have enough trust and sense of collaboration that you know that at the end of the whole process that they're going to allow you the space to go off and cut a programme together that they know ultimately they're not going to have any editorial control over. And you know, that's a good trade-off ultimately, I think.
Well, I mean, there must have been days where you came in and just like, I don't want a camera in my face.
Oh, I can't.
Did you say that to them? Did you say, don't film me today, ever?
Do you know what? You get into a relationship, because I had camera people there with me. It weren't fixed cameras. You have a relationship with those people. So, you know, they would phone up and say, we'd like to come in tomorrow. And if I'd say, no, really, it's not a good idea, they would negotiate, and they would negotiate very hard. And I would, more often than not, acquiesce to that.
You can believe that if you want.
So very, you know, I don't think there were many times when I said no, I meant no. You know, we did negotiate, and we found a way around it most of the time.
Did you feel you were in control of it at all?
No, no, no.
Did you feel you were in control of making it?
I didn't feel like I was in control of it either, no. I don't think anyone was in control of it. I think we felt like there was there are points where the interests converge, and then there are points where the interests diverge, and then it's all just about trust and the strength of the relationship. You know, James Newton, the director, who was the person that Carol had probably the closest relationship with, I think in terms of swearing, he was probably the target of most of the swearing. You know, James is very good at always kind of being there without you quite realising that he's there. And he's, like all directors, ultimately, he doesn't take no for an answer easily.
No. But it must affect your behaviour in more ways than swearing. I mean, Martin, how did the presence of the cameras change you during that day, affect you? You must have been aware of them, and that this might be broadcast. Yeah,
you are aware of the cameras that are being carried, and the potty mouth does drop. We don't swear so much, but you do, when you get into it and you're actually doing the job. I mean, Gary, during the interview, used the phrase, a bit of skirt, and that took up an awful lot of editorial newsworthiness. It became a big thing. But it was in the context, it was out of context of when it was in the interview. We're trying to provoke people to say things to get an account. So yeah, we're going to try and push their buttons. We're going to be really horrible to do it. And we were having conversations as we were coming out. But to do the job properly, you've got to have that conversation. So if the camera's there, the camera's there. But you'd probably a little bit less potty-mouthed about it. You wouldn't call the solicitor what you were genuinely thinking. be a little bit more discreet. Perhaps say he was more professional.
But there must have been some performing as well, mustn't there? A bit?
Not for that one. Possibly in the interviews at the end, the bit where they're going over and they're talking to you. But on the actual day itself, particularly when it got to sort of 15 hours in, there was no acting there, I tell you. It was just, I want to get this over and done with and go home to bed. You're 15 hours in, you're tired. And then we got the result that we wanted and we were quite happy.
Because, Carol, these are scenes that we think we're very familiar with, because we watch cop shows and dramas. I mean, I guess you do as well, do you?
I do. I like them. Some of them.
So does life imitate art at all?
Yes. Yeah, or art imitates life. I'm not sure which way around. Definitely. There's some programmes out there that you think are fairly accurate. My favourite is Scott and Bailey because, of course, it's based in Manchester. You know, Manchester actresses, and I recognise that, you know, the system that they have is very similar. Is the nearest thing to the office that I work in. But then I understand the artistic licence, and you watch some programmes, and Greg, my husband, who's also a retired cop, we sit there and we go, oh God, that would never happen, and you know, things like police women not wearing the hats right, and I get very irritated. But you know, you switch off. But
you went into this so excited about the thoughts of being on television.
I did.
So again, how did it affect your behaviour, apart from swearing? Because you must have been aware that, you know, this was a long process. People were going to really get to know you. You know, months in, you now know.
Months in I did. At the beginning, my behaviour was entirely different. The way I spoke was entirely different. You know, I have a very broad northern accent. I'm Bolton born and bred, and anybody who knows Bolton will know exactly what part of Bolton I'm from. I know it's a broad accent. And because I was being filmed, I was thinking, I don't want people thinking, oh, she sounds like she's off Coronation Street. So, I deliberately changed the way I spoke, and I slowed it down, and I tried to speak proper. You know, but it all, you know, just a few hours in, you're like, well, I'm sick of this now. So I changed back to talking the way I talk. So, yes, it did change my behaviour. And it always changed my behaviour. I think even right to the very end, there was an element of control about what I was doing.
So do you think it changed what you were doing professionally? Not just how you were speaking, you know. You must have been aware that any mistake is potentially a disastrous moment in a television documentary.
I was acutely aware of that, and because of the role that I have, it may not necessarily be my mistake, it might have been somebody else's mistake, and how do we deal with that? And to be honest, I was fairly blinkered about that. I did not give due regard to the full circumstances and the implications of what I was doing, because I truly didn't expect it to go on so long. And the longer it goes on, the more exposed you become. But then the longer you go on, the more familiar you become with your TV crew, and the more confident you become about what you say and what you do. So I guess if there were problems or, you know, things being picked up, it would be early doors, because I became very practised and rehearsed at how I should behave when the cameras were there.
That's a really important point, because a lot of the material that we were, in fact, all of the material we were filming was ultimately disclosable as well. So it all, if anything that was relevant to the defence case had been filmed, we had a disclosure officer who would go through all of the material that was shot and decide if anything had to be disclosed to the defence, which ultimately would then have helped his case. So it's not just about exposure on television, it's actually, it could incriminate or prejudice the whole case.
I mean, the big difference as a viewer is that we could see your interview and his reactions, even down to the jiggling leg. And for you, we had to imagine most of it.
Yeah, that was a negotiation that we had with James. James did want to be in on the interview, wanted to be able to film it, but that was one of those issues that for, you know, the professional due regard, we had to have for what we were doing. And I couldn't concentrate on what I needed to do if cameras were in there, because I was aware that I'm always aware. So I wanted to concentrate purely on what we were doing. We were very time constrained, so I wouldn't have the cameras in.
Elisa, I mean, in terms of having the cameras in the room, I mean, you must have thought, you know, this is bloody lucky.
Well, it wasn't just luck. It was, you know, a long negotiation as well. And we didn't rig all of the interview suites. There were 7 and we rigged 3. So people could have gone into a non-rigged interview suite if they weren't comfortable with the cameras. But yes, I suppose we are lucky in that it's an amazing, because what the fixed rig cameras can do, because they're stuck on the walls, people weren't aware of us. I mean, they saw them when they came in. There were 4 cameras in a small room, but then everybody just forgot about us. And also, the brilliant thing for us was it meant that it gave us lots of legal options as well, because often when we were filming cases, we wouldn't know whether we were going to be able to see the person's face until the court case had happened. So we could film, in Mr. Bay, we filmed close-ups of his eyes and his lips. We could have told the story without seeing his face, and we also filmed it with full identity exposed because we had so many cameras and options. So, but yeah, no, it is the key thing about the series. It's the best thing about the series. It's the key scene, the showdown, the heart, the soul of the series, I would say.
So once it's happened, I mean, you're considering whether or not to let them run it, but you're also aware that they are now editing this into a programme. So did you have any communication with them during that process? I mean, did you express any views as to what they should use, what they shouldn't use? Did you have any worries about that, or...?
I didn't, actually. I don't think I did. I think there was another episode where another officer said something and they wanted it cut and it was taken out.
So you trust them by this stage?
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, I never thought that one was going to go to trial, or go to TV, sorry, because we had somebody with us at the trial, not the cameras though, we just had a producer that came to the trial, the 6-week trial, and got feedback, and she saw the whole process and all the highs and lows that you were going through when you thought, yes, we've got them, no, we haven't. But that's the same for every trial. And I never thought it was going to go out. In fact, I was doing The Garden when the verdicts came out, and Chris texted me, and my first text back was, The Garden aren't going to be very happy.
The Garden as in production company.
Yeah,
we thought that was going to be untransmittable.
So I didn't think it was going to go out. I had nothing to worry about.
I want to hear about what it's like when it's going out in a moment, but let's have another look at a clip. Now, there was a sort of a Vegas theme running through your day, because it was the first day back, and we have slightly stitched you up here, but have a look at this.
Get a cup of coffee in, yeah, because I need you alert for the interviews, all right? I'll let you get yourself settled, mate, for 5 minutes after your holiday to Vegas.
Yeah. Where'd you go? Vegas.
How much money did you lose?
We took $1,600 spending money. Right. And after the first 3 days, gambling, food, drinks, the whole lot, we were about $150 down. That was it. Really? Yeah, one day we won $1,000 between the 4 of us and stuff, just on slot machines. Well, first day back. I've just come back from Vegas.
Have you?
Yeah. Same on time clock, my body clock's all over the place.
It's cheese sauce, isn't it?
And that was the burger with salad, the ribeye. That's the 20-ounce steak. This was the Cheesecake Factory. That's a starter. And that's massive. Siegfried and Roy, you know those magicians? That was a view from our bedroom window. That's the Monte Carlo. MGM Grand is over there. And the rule was we did $20, and if you doubled it, because there was 4 of us. And what we'd do is...
Ready? OK, can I just take the... I'll photocopy that for you.
Thanks.
So who did you watch it with?
Yeah, I wasn't going to watch it when it went out on the night. And my 2 friends came round and knocked on the door at 10 to 9, said, we're here to watch it with you. And that was one of the lads that went to Vegas, who's called Michael Jackson, and a guy called Rob Haylock, and they sat either side of me, sniggering all the way through it. So it was great.
And how did it feel?
Weird. Watching yourself on telly. I was looking at it from a different perspective though, because I was thinking, why didn't they show that bit of the interview? Oh, I thought that bit was much better. And we look at it from a different thing and thinking, oh, you don't need to show the Vegas stuff. Show more interview. You know, there was 3 hours of interview and stuff. But
you're also looking at yourself, aren't you? And you're thinking, how do I come over? Presumably.
Yeah. Actually, before it went out, we did a press release similar environment to what we're in at the moment. And they asked me how I felt about it. And the first thing I said is, I realised how much I need to go on a diet. And it hasn't worked because I'm still the way I am. So, no, it's good. I can see all my faults. I should have had a shave. That's the one thing they've been back again. So I've been shaving every day, just because I can't grow stubble and look that good, you know.
Carol, let's talk about your day of transmission as well. I mean, what was sort of the build-up to that like?
So explain that again, which?
Well, when you know it's going to be on.
I was a bit embarrassed really because I didn't know, I hadn't had a preview. I'd seen the first episode, but I hadn't seen the subsequent 2, so I was a little bit worried. I'd got some feedback from Command who'd seen it, who, you know, it's all right, you know, it's good and blah, blah. And the feedback was that Rod needs to stop smoking and they're going to need an interpreter for me. So all my worries about my accent were, you know, I'm paranoid about it now.
Rod needs to stop smoking because
it's hot.
And the crews kept grabbing him when he was having the cigarette away from you.
Yeah, which irritated me incredibly because I needed him so we could get on with our interview planning. But the interview crew kept interviewing him, so we locked horns a few times. I was a little annoyed with Rod. I think that might have come across.
Let's take another look at the detectives, and this is what's the verdict?
We're on day 10 of deliberations, and it's the longest time I've ever waited for a verdict in my police history. I've got 28 years service, come to all kinds of different trials, but this is the longest I've ever had to wait. And because there's so many victims, the longer we wait, the more anxious everybody's getting, including me, and I am very anxious.
After 2 weeks of deliberation, the jury returns.
Territ got brought up from the cells into the dock, never so much as looked at anybody. It's an old Dickensian court, so everybody leaned forward to see him because he is in a dock which is below us. So everything went, you know, everything creaked. And the next thing I knew was the ladies all cheered and we were going, yes, yes, yes. And there was this big roar that made me jump. And all the ladies were clapping and cheering. And then it dawned on me what I'd heard. You know, I was like, oh my God, guilty. Ray Territ is a devious, manipulative sexual predator. He abused his celebrity status in the worst way imaginable. The girls he preyed upon were naive and inexperienced and in awe of who he was.
So what kind of reaction did you get?
After the programme went out, incredible. I wasn't prepared for it because it's just my everyday work. So although I knew there was cameras, I knew there was going to be a programme, I really wasn't prepared for strangers in the streets speaking to me. I went for my lottery ticket at Tesco and she went, I watched you last night. The lady in the canteen gave me extra onions on my sandwich. You know, I was like, I've arrived. So it was fabulous, but I think for me, it was the acclaim from other police officers. Police officers I didn't know. We have a big force. At the moment, although it's dwindling, we've currently got about 6,000 cops in Greater Manchester. And cops I'd never spoken to, never met, said, I saw you the other night. I really enjoyed the programme, it was really good. And then they'd stand and have a conversation about the investigation and the results, etc. You know, cops I didn't know from Adam and would, on a day-to-day basis, walk past. And it was really, well, it kind of gave me an inner warmth. It was nice, it was nice.
And people must have got in touch with you.
I did. I got fan mail. And I've got a stalker. So, you know, I'm here, you know, I really have. I have. Who's currently on a mental health ward because he's been sectioned. But he is genuinely my stalker, so thank you. But yeah, I got...
Martin, have you got a stalker?
No.
You're feeling a bit disappointed now, aren't you?
I am, no. I did get a phone call from 3 Counties Radio. They wanted to know about Vegas. So I did a phone call and phoned him up and said, I hear you need some travel stuff, which was quite funny. I had a typical police reaction, which was I walked into the office the following day, my computer had Welcome to Vegas on it. There was every hotel had been printed off and put all over my desk and the fridge. All the senior command knew who I was, even if I didn't know who they were, which is very worrying, particularly when they're not in uniform. But the nicest thing that actually came out, and it was the programme that highlighted, was a guy called Bernard Pile, who was the shooter. He had slashed somebody, 2 police officers in 1998. He slashed their throats, but he didn't kill them, thank God. And the brother of one of the officers had watched it and emailed us and said thank you.
And what happens with both of you now when you walk into the interview room? Does your suspect go, oh my God, not you, you know?
We've had that. Strangely enough, if it goes through, you might see it all again, because I think it was on Monday this week, Gary and I interviewed somebody for conspiracy to murder, and Atik was the solicitor. I think you can probably guess what the defendant said for an hour and 20 minutes.
I've had a really quite a nice reaction, and I think it's down to the kind of investigation that it was, because nobody likes a rapist and nobody likes a child rapist, including the criminal fraternity. So although I've probably not met as many people in the custody office as Martin, because that's not my role all the time, when I have been acknowledged in the custody office, it's with very positive comments from the criminal fraternity. Strange, but true.
Well, it's good they respect your work.
Which isn't often.
We've got a very few minutes for questions. Who would like to kick off? Yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm a freelance series director, and until 2 weeks ago, I was an officer with the Met as well. And thank you very much for a really insightful session. And these programmes, I think, are really important, not just for the police and people's understanding of that, but also for the public. In the light of a few things recently, so I did some work a couple of years ago with the officers that dealt with the Lee Rigby case. And since then, there have been a lot of terrorism threats against what so-called agents of the state. Advice to police officers throughout the country is don't travel to work on half blues, i.e. with your boots and trousers on and a civilian jacket. There have been hostile reconnaissance against Shepherd's Bush Police Station and officers targeted, officers told not to congregate outside police stations. There's a specific threat against police officers from terrorists. Did you consider this? Did this pass through your mind as well when you were thinking of taking part? But also, I'd be interested to know what pressures this puts on programme makers and indeed channels, considering that sort of level of personal safety at stake.
Yeah, Luton is a very special town. Statistically, I don't think there's been a terrorist attack launched in the UK since 1980, including the IRA, that hasn't had connections to Luton. So, very, very aware of that situation. Even more so when the threat level came out and we were all warned about half blues. I didn't tell my wife or my family for about 4 months because it is a worry. But that's my job, that's what I do. If we don't do it, who is? So.
It raised its head with us. The programme had started before the threat level was increased. And it was a consideration, but I don't live in the county that I work in. So I didn't feel, I don't work in uniform. I don't work in live in a community where people have animosity towards police officers. It's a small rural village, and I didn't feel I was at threat.
There were some detectives who
there
did
were.
feel anxious about being identified in the series.
And what do you think the broadcast... I mean, you're about to join the channel, Elisa. I mean, what is the broadcaster's duty of care? To Martin, who says, oh, that's fine, that's my job.
I think we have to take our lead from the individuals such as Martin and Carol and how you feel about it. I mean, I think what's quite interesting about Luton Police Station is a lot of people don't live in Luton, and we did find that a lot of people who did live in Luton didn't want to take part. So we would take our lead from them.
Anyone else? Yes.
Adele from 9 Lives. You talked about your release, Martin. Why would the solicitor allow you to show their face? And why would the gentleman who said no comment for 90 minutes allow you to show their face? I didn't understand why you would do that. Sorry, it's just sorry. It's a question to Minnow. I don't get it. So I mentioned Martin because you talked about you having your conversation with your family, and I totally get that. And I just love Carol. I think your accent's fantastic.
So it's about consent for the others. Yeah.
You're so warm. I don't see you coming, do they? But I don't understand why the people on the other side would agree. Why would they?
So the defence solicitor, he was actually passionately pro the project, and he believed that he wanted the public to see the work he did and to sort of generally demystify the legal process and the criminal justice system. So he believed in that. So he wore a radio mic during that interview, and he was very happy to have his face shown. The suspect, when he was found not guilty, we only really properly nailed down his consent when he was found not guilty. I thought he was going to say no, and I assumed he was, but we went to meet him, and actually he felt so aggrieved that he'd spent 3.5 months in prison and then found not guilty that he wanted this to be shown. So people have really different reasons and agendas, and you sort of can't second guess it.
And just during the process, they don't have any choice, presumably.
They know that we are filming them. We were in his house. He didn't put his hand in front of the camera. He said he didn't want his children's face to be shown. He knew we were filming. I think in the case of Baig, he gave more his assent rather than his consent. You know, he didn't go into a room that didn't have cameras. But the actual final consent we only gained after he was found not guilty.
But if Ray Terrace had said, I don't want to be filmed...
He did say that.
He did say that, and there were areas where we didn't film him, where we felt like he was entitled to privacy, but there were some areas where we felt like, I mean, and his resistance to filming wasn't particularly strong, it has to be said. Ultimately, had he been acquitted, like Big, there's no way he would have consented to any of that stuff being used, and we wouldn't have been able to broadcast any of it.
We thought that about. We thought Mr. Baig wouldn't consent. It was so surprising. I mean, it's a different. He would definitely not.
So I think we would have been faced with a very, very different situation. Ultimately, had he really resisted and had it made their job too difficult to do, then we would have had to back off.
I'm really sorry this is a 45-minute session because we'd go on and on. But unfortunately, we've got to wrap it up. Just in 10 seconds before we do, would you do it again?
No. But I want a cameo role.
Carol.
Martin, you would?
I have.
I'm
open to offers.
Oh, I'm open to offers.
Oh, so you'll do Bake Off? You just don't want to do that?
Yeah.
No, my wife actually said I'm not allowed to turn down I'm a Celebrity. I think she wants to see me eat horrible things and starve for 3 weeks. It's probably 20 years of revenge.
Well, thank you very much indeed.